Steph playing through pain with an injured right finger certainly affected him Game 3. Max, should the Warriors be concerned about Steph moving forward?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know he's banged up this time of year, and maybe it affects his performance, but Steph Curry has consistently been, when it comes to making shots and decision-making with the ball, let's be honest, in the important playoff games, he's consistently been, in crunch time, a worse version of himself. And he gets a little bit, he flies under the radar because Harden is more famously that way. And a bigger part of his team, really, because Harden's responsible for more of the offense. But Steph is a huge problem that way. Look, his presence is the reason that KD is open all the time, right? They don't want him counting by threes with Steph and Clay. They'd rather count by twos with KD and still lose probably because KD is so great. But just your presence alone, man, it's not the same thing as what he does in the regular season, where his presence alters the game and his shot-making ability does too. Stephen A., I'm reminded of Game 6, the 73-win season, when LeBron blocked him, meets him at the rim, blocks him, and hit him with the inspect deck, Stephen A., from Bring the Ruckus. Remember? I scream on you like your dad. Screamed on him like he was his dad. And did Steph say anything? Steph kind of hung his head, walked away. Uh-oh. And in Game 7, what happened? Game 7, 4 minutes and 22 seconds to go. The greatest half-court offense of all time. Steph, the conductor, 0 points. There it is. LeBron blocks him. What? And screams on him. Come on, son. And what's Steph do? 4 minutes, 22 seconds the next game, at home, fate of the universe on the line, not a single point. Steph behind the back passes out of bounds to Clay. Steph missing shots, not wanting to take shots. I mean, let's be honest. By the way, they ran Kyrie right at Steph. They wanted Steph on defense. Steph is a great player. Love watching him play, Stephen A. This is not to deny what he is, but let's not deny what he is. He's a guy who's been a lesser player in the biggest moments than he normally is. That's one of the reasons the Rockets have been vulnerable. They lost that 73-win season in the finals to Cleveland. And by the way, nearly lost to Houston last year, even after they added KD. What is that little vulnerability in them? They should be completely invincible. Maybe that's one of the reasons.
I'm not worried about Steph Curry, and the reason I'm not worried about Steph Curry is because I've seen him miss open shots. Obviously, if you want to have a reason to be worried about Steph Curry, be worried about the foul trouble. He's had 5 fouls all 3 games of this series. They put him in pick and roll situations where it's Harden or it's Chris Paul. They make sure to ensure that he ends up guarding them at some point because they know they can get him in the foul trouble, and that's what they've been doing. That's a reason to be concerned, but I'm not worried about Steph Curry, the offensive player. I'm not worried about Steph Curry, who hasn't scored better than 24 points in the last 7 games of these playoffs dating back to the first round, because I think that when you see the kind of stuff that happened in Game 3, that's exactly the kind of stuff that gets him going. I don't think he's been nearly as aggressive as he needs to be. I don't think he's been nearly as focused as he needs to be. And the other night in Houston, you should have listened to this crowd, Max, that they were really, really ripping him and getting on him and what have you. And it's the kind of thing that I think that Draymond Green and Steve Kerr brought up accurately so when they talked about it locks him in, it gets his focus going. And with a shooter of this magnitude, who we all recognize as the best to have ever done it, I think this is the kind of thing you're right to point out what he hasn't done, because if it were James Harden, we would have been all over him as we have been. But Steph Curry has gotten a pass because we've been so focused on James Harden. But I will tell you this. Steph Curry is not a guy that you want to get locked in and focused with that shooting ability. You don't want that because it could be lights out for you. He can turn around and drop 40, and I definitely think he has the potential to do that.
I've been waiting for that. I've been waiting for that a long time. When I was on Sports Nation during that 73-win season, I was on TV, Stephen A. saying every day, this is Steph's world. Sorry, LeBron. Sorry, everyone else. I know it wouldn't be this case in any other era. I know it's not fair, but the way the game is played today, Steph should be the guy in Space Jam, not LeBron. It's his NBA. And we'd seen him do this all season. He was the MVP. But when it mattered most, he went away. He didn't have any of those monster games. In fact, tell you the truth, I can't recall one monster game when I thought it really, really mattered in this Warriors dynasty from Steph. You know, listen, when you have KD and Clay and everyone else on your team and you're as great as Steph, you're going to put up some numbers sometimes. But I'm talking about, like, here it is, Steph versus LeBron, Steph versus the other superstar, and Steph gave him, as you just said, 40 on a great shooting night and won the game for Golden State. It doesn't work that way. Usually it's more like, I'm attracting attention. Steph's thinking, I'm attracting attention. I'm going to find the open man. And even then doesn't a lot of times make kind of careful decisions with the ball when they need it most. He's a little lackadaisical with it. I'm just being honest about this. Now, part of it may be he's slightly built. You pointed out injury. He's slightly built, and so it takes a toll. And by now, there are things physically wrong with him usually by this time in the playoffs. But, man, he's missing dunks. And, by the way, costing them the game in the process. Forget about, like, missing shots. He's missing point blank at the rim. That's not – how does that happen at this time?
Well, I don't think he has to score 40 in order to help lead them to victory. When Kevin Durant exploded and he went on that tear, in the third quarter and what have you, they go a timeout and then ultimately they come back, they go away from him, and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are shooting and they're both struggling. I'm saying in a game like this, I don't think Steph Curry will struggle. I think that if you leave this man open, he will bury you alive. And I think it's one of those situations, as long as KD is KD, Steph Curry will take advantage of it more than he's done in the first 3 games of this series.
Real quick question, Stephen A. This is what I feel about the Warriors. I'm going to leave Draymond out of this. I'm going to talk about and Iguodala. I'm talking about the big 3 scorers. They all give me the feeling. It doesn't mean it always has to be this way, but so far that they're front runners. That they get a lot of heart when they're up, when they're crew deep, when they can't lose. Then they're real. Then everyone's a real clutch kind of player, right? When they're up 15. But what about when you need them the most? Like, hey, Steph, they need you to take them there. I haven't seen it.
Well, listen, you haven't seen it because we're measuring him against himself in terms of the 40 and 50-point explosions or what have you. But I think it's safe to say nobody in their right mind will want to leave these brothers open.